beautiful reef tank I've ever seen in my entire life.
So this is a custom 180. It's been set up now for about 7 years.
Hey guys, welcome back to Colson's Critters. I'm Colson Smith, and today's video is absolutely insane. I took a tour of probably the most beautiful reef tank I've ever seen in my entire life. Huge shout out to Mark for letting me film his tank. And without further ado, let's get into the video.
So what size tank do you have, and then like how long has it been set up to?
So this is a custom 180. It's been set up now for about 7 years. Funny story about this. We couldn't get it into the room. I had to take the door jamb off in order to get the tank into the room as well as the cabinet.
Wow.
I made a mistake. I made the cabinet a little bit too low. Just thought it would be a little bit imposing if it were standard size, and that was a big mistake. I really wish I'd made it back to standard size, you know, so I could not have to crouch down to look at things.
No, not when you sit down you can watch.
But when you sit down on the little couch here, you know, you can actually see pretty well.
And then how big is that tank down there?
That is a 40.
And is that connected to the same?
Yes.
Oh wow. Okay.
So
this is crazy.
So the main tank drains into both the sump and then the 40-gallon mini reef tank down here, and then the mini reef tank is drilled into the sump. So that overflows into the sump.
And then you got this little nano back here.
Yep.
Your little 40 gallons cooler than like most people's actual reef tank. Crazy.
Well, it's fun to have that down there because I kind of want everything. I really kind of push the envelope. People say you shouldn't have, you know, more than a pair of clownfish in the tank. And at one time I actually had 3 different pairs of clownfish. They were all spawning, but they're all in their own anemones. And I ended up taking out the tomato clowns because the bubble tip anemones were splitting so fast that they were taking up a lot of real estate and starting to kill the corals. So I went ahead and took those out, and I put the bubble tips down here in the bottom and just stayed with the skunk clowns over here with the sea bay anemone, or the Heteractis sea bay anemone, and then also the magnificent anemone back over there with the Percula clowns.
Awesome.
I've got T5 set up as well as 3 Gen 4 Ecotech lights in there. And that does
XR30s or?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep. So that does a really good job of providing the balance in there. The T5s go off at 6 p.m. and then the Ecotechs slowly ramp down and they go off about 8:30. So what I do is after dinner, my wife goes in and watches a bunch of television programs.
Man, you watch
I come in here, you know, into my little man cave and watch my fish.
This is better than TV, in my opinion. How often do you run like white versus blue light?
So I run the actinics starting at 7:30 in the morning and then ending at 8:30 at night.
Okay.
But they ramp up and then they ramp down, and when they ramp down, the power is such where, you know, they're not getting a whole lot of parts, mainly for just, you know, visual watching the fish.
Yeah, exactly.
The T5s are on for 8 hours a day. So I try to give them enough light, but I certainly don't want to give them too much light. Obviously, different corals demand different light levels. Some can handle a little bit lower par than others. Others demand a lot of par in order to get the coloration. So part of the process has been trying to figure out where I can put the corals
to get the
that are going to have the best coloration. Generally speaking, the tenuouses like lots of light, so they're going to be higher in the tank and in the middle of the tank. Some of the corals like this Kimbiensis down here, they don't require a whole bunch of light, so you can actually put them low in the tank. But even though it's kind of a uniform color, it does have a cool growth pattern, and I think it's nice because it offsets some of the other colors you have in the tank. So over time, it's been kind of trial and error to figure out where the corals should be to get the best coloration. Yeah. This is a vivid rainbow, and it's a little bit dark. It's not getting quite the light that would really make it pop and have more of a white body. You can see the white and the blue on the growth tips, but it's a little bit darker towards the center. I took a frag off of that and stuck it down here, and it's almost completely red looking, very dark, because it's not getting enough light.
Oh yeah, so like that
it's alive
versus
but, yeah,
that. Yeah.
I do a couple different things. I dose the bulk reef supply, alkalinity, and calcium, and then I use the modified balling method. So I've got the trace elements in A, the trace elements in B, and then I've got the salts, which is sodium free, as part C. So I dose that. I dose amino acids, and that's in a separate doser. I also dose NOPOX, and I've got it dialed in now. The reason why I dose NOPOX is if I left this to its own accord, I would slowly get nitrate creep to the point where it would get up to 20 parts per thousand and or 20 parts per million, and the corals would start to darken out. And so what I found is by doing a very modest NOPOX dosing every single day, I'm able to keep the nitrates within 5 parts per million, and then my phosphates are like 0.05 or less.
Sweet.
And it holds relatively steady. So the other thing that I've done that I think is really critical in terms of maintaining the stability of the tank is I've got the Apex Neptune, and that allows me to monitor the alkalinity every single day. So the calcium and the magnesium are not that big of a deal, but alkalinity is key, and if you can keep the alkalinity stable, that is the most critical thing. Before I had the Neptune, I had a situation where my alkalinity started to creep up. So I had so many corals in the tank that they consumed all of the nitrates in there, and there was nothing for them to eat, and they began to starve. So I started to get burn on the tips of the coral.
That's a crazy problem.
Yeah, well, so I added some more fish to, obviously add some more nutrients to the system. But during that period of time, I got calcium burn on the tips of the corals, the growth tips, because there was nothing for them to eat or consume for growth. And the alkalinity, went up to like 12 wow. pKh.
Yeah, that's not good.
So I went ahead and put the Neptune in, and since I put the Neptune in, I've been able to maintain the balance spot on. So I do quite a bit of traveling in my retirement, and as a result, no, actually it's more diving now than fishing.
Oh yeah.
So quite a bit of traveling, and my wife doesn't really want to know how to run anything. She just wants to be able to feed the fish. So by having Apex and being able to pull it up online on my iPhone and take a look at all the parameters on a daily basis, it makes life real easy. And then if push comes to shove, we've got some people that are experts, and we can call them in and help out, help my wife out while I'm gone.
Now if you need me, you realize I live right across the street.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's relatively comforting to know that I can control things halfway around the world, with my Apex.
Yeah.
And that's it. Kind of push the envelope. So I've got butterfly fish in here. I've got 2 sets of clownfish. I've got 4 different angelfish in the tank, and it's a reef tank. But my philosophy is these fish are all, with caution in a reef tank. So if you have enough corals and if everything is healthy, they're going to pick on the corals. I do not get any kind of polyp extension at all. So if you come in here to try to take a look at my corals to see, beautiful polyp extension, for example, this cherry bomb right up here, 2 guys coral cherry bomb. It's mostly kind of bluish looking because the pink polyps have all been sucked in. That's because the butterfly fish and the angelfish are constantly nipping on them, so they're constantly drawn in. You can see them at night, obviously, if you come in here and turn on the lights when everything is asleep. I wanted to have a reef tank. I wanted to have it as close to the ocean as possible, and so by putting all these things in there, yeah, I'm pushing the envelope, but I got exactly what I want, and I'm very happy with it.
Beautiful.
Going after a coral, going after it hard, there's a problem with it. It's
with
sick. So for example,
fish or the coral?
The coral. So for example, the torches, if I've got a butterfly fish going after a torch, it's generally because that polyp is not happy.
Or not healthy.
Not healthy. So it's like retracted, and it's probably going to die anyway. And so the butterfly fish go after it. So they're almost like a first alert of the tank. I'll know when something is not healthy because the butterfly fish are going after it and eating the dead tissue. It is called
the stag?
Acropora hoaxami. That staghorn is particularly interesting to the folks at Top Shelf Aquatics. You guys keep asking me, do you have any more hoaxami? And so when it grows and I frag it off, I bring it in, and your coral folks like it a lot. But I've had that coral, I bought that as a frag about the size of my little finger almost 8 years ago.
Wow.
And I had it in a 70-gallon tank before I moved it into this tank. So a lot of these corals in here have been like 3, 4, 5, 6 generations of fragging and selling off pieces and growing them back out again. This tenuous right here, this cherry bomb tenuous, I bought that was the size of my thumb like 5 years ago.
So all these are frags?
Some of these are small colonies, but most of them came from frags. I got really bad dinoflagellates and the real slimy kind that form the bubble strings. And I tried everything. I tried the hydrogen peroxide, I tried blanking out the tank for 3 days, all of the things you're supposed to do, you know, using a baster and blowing them off. But at night what they do is they just break down and swim around the tank. So as a last resort, I got the UV sterilizer.
And that solved it?
Put the UV sterilizer in, within 5 days it was gone.
Wow.
Completely eliminated. So if there's one thing that I'm a huge believer in, it is UV filtration.
Yep. How often do you feed?
I generally feed 1 to 2 times a day. For the main tank, we feed them frozen foods. Sometimes I'll feed them pellets. And then every other day I feed them nori. You want to see nori hockey? This is really fun. Watch this. This is nori hockey.
They steal it from each other?
Yep.
Oh, where'd it go?
It ran.
Somebody scored.
Yeah.
Grabs the puck and scores!
What's really funny is if one of these clown gets it, they take it right into the anemone.
Oh, I bet.
And then the fish hover around there and just wait for the opportunity to pull it out without getting stung by the anemone. The first tank I had was a 70-gallon custom that I got from Top Shelf. And all the plumbing and everything was complete. The sump was already drilled out. All I had to do was just add water, add sand, and then you know, fish and corals as soon as it was ready to have it. Very quickly outgrew that tank, which is why I got this one here. Interestingly, I wanted a little bit bigger than this, but my wife said, no, it's not going to fit in the room. And she was absolutely right, which is why I had to take the door jamb out to get everything in.
Yeah.
So we got the tank set up.
So
and
you
I
built
went ahead
this
and,
tank by yourself?
Yeah, so I did all the plumbing on this thing, and I did all the computer work on it.
Wow.
So this is actually a custom
Obviously
made,
you did something right.
Yeah, this is a custom made hood that I put together. It's a very thin plastic, and it's just glued together, and I got black plastic and then spray painted where I glued it, and it's very light, so I don't have a problem with the weight interfering with the mounting on it. But the computer system's over here.
Moved,
And at one time I had more stuff in here than I needed. I had a chiller, but the chiller made the room super hot. It kept the tank perfect, but made the room super hot. And we just had a problem with this room anyway because it's at the back end of the house and our air conditioner's old. So what we ended up doing was putting
I see that.
a split unit in here.
That's good.
And this does a magnificent job of not only cooling this room, but cooling the back of the house. And it eliminated the need for the chiller, which put out a tremendous amount of heat on its own. So don't need the chiller anymore. But on a ramp, so they go from 20% to 100% twice a day, just like a tide. So they ramp up, they reach peak, and then they ramp back down again, ramp up, reach peak, and then back down again.
On your way there, because you have 2 of them on each side?
So I've got a pair on each side.
No flow like toward the back?
Well, I've got...
Oh, you have the return.
Yeah, so I've got the return, which is a Vario 7. Vario 7, I think, puts out, I don't know, like 1,800 gallons an hour.
Sweet.
So there's a lot of flow in there. And then I've also got probably another 1,200 gallons an hour coming from the pump in the back of the tank, which runs the UV sterilization.
And the way you have this set up, it just makes it look so natural. It looks bigger than a 180 too.
Well, that was the other thing that I wanted. I wanted an overflow. I didn't want the ghost overflow in the back because that would take away too much space out of the room. You have to have several inches back there for the piping to go down and then come back in to the sump. So when I had this tank built, I decided to go away from a ghost overflow and just have the overflow in the main part of the tank. But because this is a custom tank, I decided to go a little bit wider on it, which gave me the depth that I was looking for.
Yeah.
And at the same time gave me the ability to put rocks right in front of the overflow and completely hide it. So I would tell hobbyists when they're asking questions like, you know, can I put a butterfly fish in my tank, and You know, you see people that say, nope, not reef safe, not going to happen. I say, you can do it. So you've got to be careful. You make sure that you've got enough coral in the tank that they're not going to attack any one specific one and kill it. Now, obviously, if you had a bunch of frags in here, if they start nibbling on a frag, you know, they're probably going to damage it. But when you have a full-blown coral like this, you know, a healthy colony, they're not going to damage it to the point where it's going to die. So yeah, you can push the envelope and you can do things that you know, we were told you can't do. Anthias, they seem to be more of a rental fish to me. For whatever reason, I can't seem to keep them for more than about 18 months or so. But when I've had anthias in here, I've had them spawn. And anthias spawn just before the lights go out. So the fish that are spawning in here now are the 2 pairs of clownfish. They spawn on a regular basis. The damselfish spawn, the humbug damselfish spawn, and then the yellowtail damselfish spawn in here as well. And then the butterfly fish spawn.
The butterflies spawn?
Yes.
Wow.
So you can tell when the female butterfly is gravid. I mean, her belly is just so full, and you can watch them go through, you know, their mating behavior. They just take on a completely different demeanor, and they take on different colors as well. They become a little bit more dark, and the striping becomes a little bit more bold. They go through these rituals. And I think they spawn just before dark or after dark. I haven't physically seen them do it yet. When I did the overflow, I made my overflow pipes a little bit too tall. So I've got this constant gurgling noise. When people come in the house, it sounds like flushing toilets all the time. There's nothing I can do about it. I've got so much flow going through here that when it goes to the overflow, it just continues to gurgle. So you just kind of get used to the noise. So when I got both of these anemones, this guy right here was about that big around. And at first I had him on the bottom in the sand over here, and it was not happy. It started walking all over the tank. And then I figured it just needed a little bit more light. So I went to the LFS, went to Top Shelf, and I got me one of those small bridges and then a couple other rocks, flat rocks. And I glued the bridge to a flat rock and then another flat rock this way. So I had actually a bowl, because these anemones like to have their foot in a bowl. So I went ahead and filled up the bowl with sand, stuck the anemone in there.
And here you go.
Boom, it stayed right there, and you can see the size of it now.
Same with that one. That one hasn't moved around.
That one has an exposed foot. It's always on a rock. So it's on a flat rock right now, and I've taken all the rocks in front of it away, because if it had the ability, it would actually crawl forward to try to get directly into these lights. But I've taken away its ability to move by removing all the rocks in front of it. So it just kind of carpets out in front,
so you don't have
which
to
is
worry
fine
too much
because it
about
looks,
killing your other
it looks pretty nice. But I also got that one when it was only about that big around. The other thing is I never feed the anemones.
Just feed the fish?
Just feed the fish. So the anemones are just growing on their own. Sometimes the fish will bring food in there. So if we're feeding frozen, for example, and I've got them on the forceps, and suddenly a big chunk comes off, first fish that grabs it is a clownfish, and it'll take it right inside the anemone.
Feed the anemone.
And sort of upsets all the other guys in the tank, because the anemone will just consume it pretty quickly. What I've noticed is these fish actually have a psyche, if you will. So for example, this yellow tang right here, when I got new tangs, it went after the new tangs because it was the dominant fish in the tank. And so I ended up taking it out and putting it down here in the bottom tank for about a month. And it sulked. It wouldn't come out of the rocks. It wasn't eating very well. And so I said, what the heck, I'm just going to put it back in the main tank and see what happens. So I put it back in the main tank. Within 3 days, you know, it was back out on top again and eating and happy. So I really believe that they not only have personalities, but they also have some psyche associated with them as well. And you can watch the fish interact with each other. It's really pretty amazing. I don't clean the sand, I don't do anything. I just, sometimes I add more sand in here, because sometimes it tends to pile up in the back and I can't get to it anymore. But I've never cleaned the sand in this tank. I don't have a vacuum or anything. I just, sometimes I'll go in and stir it up on the bottom. And I've got conchs in there to, you know, help keep the algae off and the diatoms. And, you know, it's pretty much self-supporting. I do have sand sifting starfish in the sand, so I think they help. I've also got a quite large sea cucumber, which is hidden in the rocks right now. It comes out at night. There's a blue Linkia starfish in here as well.
Somewhere.
And somewhere. I've got some things in here that are considered to be, you know, delicate, if not like expert, but I think they're good canaries in the coal mine. So for example, if I saw the blue Linkia starfish getting waste-away disease, then I would have a problem, and it would alert me to the fact that I might have to go do something. So as long as I can find it every other day with my little flashlight at night, I know that it's healthy and it's doing its thing.
And you're good there.
And the tank is doing great.
Thank you all for watching. I hope you did enjoy. I hope you loved Mark's tank. Just comment down below what you think your favorite fish or favorite coral you saw in the tank was. And if you like these tour videos, I can do more of them for sure. Just let me know down in the comments. Be sure to leave a like, and yeah, till next time, peace.